Drumroll, chat spot. But first, our top story is another freight company that is unfortunately closing its doors. This time it's a trucking company out of North Carolina. Clarissa Hawes is here to break it down for us. Welcome, Clarissa.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on today.
Sure thing, Clarissa. And I mean, just jumping into this, what company is it that's calling it quits, and how many people are going to be impacted by it?
Sure. The company's name is FreightWorks Transport, and they're based out of Rutledge, North Carolina. I had to look that up, to find out exactly where that was. But this is a company that I haven't heard a lot about, and that's usually a good thing for the kind of the stories that I cover. And so yesterday, through some sources at FreightWaves, we obtained this very emotional video of the vice president of operations sharing the fact that the trucking company wasn't going to be able to make it and continue operating, and that they were going to deliver their loads and be done.
And do you ever feel, it always feels as though trucking companies, they don't ever give you a heads up. It normally just kind of occurs quite frequently. For a carrier of that size as well and the impact, were there any warning signs, or was it something that, they just woke up one week and realized that the balances and ledgers don't add up, and then I guess it's time to shut her down?
They, in this video, she mentions that several of their major contract carriers or partners had asked for significant rate reductions, and that they thought that they could make it work, and that they were trying to see how they could continue moving on, with the kind of weak freight environment that the customers are experiencing. And then they had one major contract company that pulled a significant amount of their business, meaning that they weren't even going to be able to make payroll or, pay for the fuel for the trucks that were on the road. And so that's when they made the decision, to do an orderly wind down. It was sooner than they expected. I think the original date was going to be March 10th, according to a memo that FreightWaves received from a source, but that they ended up having to start that process a few days earlier than expected.
And Clarissa, with this organized, turn down here, did they have any plans for their existing loads, or is there any kind of deal worked out where they can kind of see some of those final deals to the end, or are those just kind of gone by the wayside?
Their plan now, they're not accepting any more freight, but they are delivering the remaining freight, and they're incentivizing, sometimes when drivers hear of a store, a company that's closing its doors, it's like, screw the freight. I'm going to do what's best for me. But they're incentivizing these drivers that they'll pay them, a bonus of $500 if they deliver the freight and get a signed bill of lading from the receiver that they have delivered. And then once FreightWorks receives that, they will they will pay them. And that's a sign of a good, it's a terrible situation, but they're trying to make sure that they reassure their drivers that they are going to be taken care of. And, when you cover Celadon and Falcon Transport and cases like that where drivers are stranded, and to see, a case like this where they are really trying to work with everyone, to ensure that, it sucks, but that, for everyone, but that they are going to try to make sure everyone is paid and is able to find work soon.
I think you brought up a great point about one of the catalysts for this was contract negotiations now being under cost and they can't make payroll. It almost appears like the customer, because of their exposure, put them out of business due to rate. Do you think this is something that we may see more of as many of these Q1 RFPs are being finalized, that some carriers, when they find out that the rates are now below sustainable operating costs, that we may see more of an influx or exit?
I do. And, I looked at, I go down the rabbit hole on these stories, especially when it's companies, that have a solid reputation. There wasn't anyone that had a bad thing to say other than the fact that, they were going to be looking for a new job, but, that they had, dedicated like dedicated fleets for some of their customers, which, like where it was, like that only ran for a certain number of customers in the refrigerated space. And so, when that happens and then the money to sustain those trucks is wiped out, yeah, it's going to be very hard for them to nobody can run without continuing to not make a profit. And I think that's definitely what occurred in this case.
Really something that's going to really be impacting smaller operations, mom and pop type operations. Do you see that there's any type of chance that this would impact mid-sized carriers as well?
Yes, I don't think anybody at this point is insulated from what is happening in the freight environment. And, we're seeing a lot of the small carriers that relied on the spot market that have, gone away. And now, you think, if you have all these, these contracts and you're kind of insulated from that because you've always, didn't have to go out on, and find your own loads and you had, a guaranteed number of loads through this contract. And then now that's, as they're renegotiating rates and volumes and everything. I think we're going to see more of this happening.
And Clarissa, got about a minute left. Is there any other things that we should be watching out for coming up, or any other things that you're working on?
I'm working on several things. I got a lot of things cooking right now. Also always on the, somebody sends me a new alleged fraud situation to check out. So, I'm looking into a case involving a former employee right now on that in another state. So it's never boring for the tips that I receive.
Definitely something that we're going to be following up with you, Clarissa. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.